Hello everyone and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the discussions about industry and academia collaboration. I tuned in to hear about poor knowledge of basic selling skills, something that we'll be hearing a little bit more about in the importance of marketing later on. But first, it's now time to look at how public language services are dealing with the changes in the industry. This session is going to be chaired by Dieter RUMMEL, who is head of unit at the European Commission's Directorate General for Translation in the Informatics area. Hello, Dieter.
Hi, Aminda. Thank you for the introduction.
A pleasure. Just a reminder to send in your questions via the questions and polls tab on the right-hand side of your screen. And don't forget to spread the word beyond BRELA onto social media using the hashtag 2021TEF. I will now pass the moderating baton over to Dieter.
Thank you. Thank you, Aminda. Welcome to this session this afternoon about how public services handle automation, innovation, new technologies. How do we in the international organization deal with this topic? We've planned to take you down a dark road this afternoon. We will start quite optimistic. We have three topics. The first one is, are we in public administrations leaders or followers when it comes to technology? Where I hope to have some positive examples from the panelists. Then we will talk about what makes innovation in public services difficult. How do we get to grips with it? And because it is a rainy and pretty dreary November afternoon here in Brussels, we will take you to a session on existential dread and translation. We hope we come out of this unscathed and still optimistic. Before we start, as mentioned already, use Slido to ask your questions. We will try to take the questions during the session, so you don't have to listen to us for a whole hour before you get your say. And with that, let me introduce the panelists who've joined me here this afternoon. The first colleague I would like to introduce is Beate Kuhl, who is working at the German Federal Ministry of Defense and the German Bundeswehr in Germany, in Berlin, I guess. I should have checked this. No. Oh, no. There we go already. It goes downhill. You're, Beate, you're a language technology expert. You are a translator by training, but also a technical communicator. And in your current job, you're responsible for, I would say, everything.
Yes.
From workflow automation, computer-assisted translation support and training. Basically, the whole panoply of tools that translators work with these days in the ministry in Germany.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Thank you for being here. Our second panelist is Josep Bonet, who joined us from Geneva, who is, I can say this because Josep and I go back a couple of years. Looking at your CV, it's like you're a jack of all trades and a master of all, it seems. You started as a translator in DG Translation at the European Commission in 1988. Then you were head of unit here, you were head of IT. You were responsible for the library, for terminology at some point, for vocational training, the European Masters in Translation, and in 2017 you changed career path a little bit, moved to Geneva as the head of translation and publication in the World Trade Organization. Welcome, Josep.
Thank you very much, Dieter. It's a pleasure to see you back.
Thank you. And with our third panelist, we stay in Geneva. Maja Carrieri has also a long and very illustrious career as a translator interpreter to begin with, then from 1994 to 2002 in The Hague as where she set up the language services at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. You moved to Geneva in 2002 to the World Meteorological Organization, which is an extremely busy case these days, I understand. They're also in charge of conference and language services, and since 2002, if that is correctly, in 2002, you will be responsible for governance at the WMO. Welcome, Maja.
Thank you, Dieter. Yes, it is since end of 2019 that I'm in charge of governance services, which encompass also administrative services. But of course, my heart goes to the subject matter of today's discussion, and it is translation, interpretation, linguistic services in general. So.
Thank you, Maja. Our last panelist is Marja Hennessy, who is, if I may say that, the black sheep in the group, because you're the only one who does not have a background in translation or interpreting or anything. You come you came from the side into translation. Your background is in law, international relations, but then also IT, where you have almost spent 10 years in Nokia and telecommunications. And then you were in the team that founded the European Research Center, an executive agency of the Commission. And you've been here in DGT, in the Translation Directorate General of the European Commission, a director since 2021, and before that, head of the Finnish language department. And you have 7 languages under your control management, none of which is Finnish. But as I said, a somewhat different background from the others, but I think that will be very interesting. I would like to start, Marja, with you, with my first question. When we think of, I don't know, maybe we're just being self-critical here, but when we discussed the panel, we thought, well, typically when people hear about public administrations and public services and innovation, it's like two worlds collide. We do not have a reputation for being incredibly easy to adapt to new technologies. The industry seems to move so much faster than we and the big public administrations that we're representing. And I wanted to ask the panelists to see if they could think of some maybe positive cases where public administrations have shown that they can use new technologies in an innovative way, that they adapt quickly to what is going on in the real world outside the public administrations. How do you adapt to new technologies if you do? And how do you get your staff to follow along? Marja, would you like to start our round with an example from DGT?
Thank you, Dieter. Indeed, this is an interesting question. And when I arrived to DGT in 2018, as a relative outsider to the translation profession, DGT was just introducing e-translation, which is our self-developed neural machine translation system. And I was kind of in a front seat to follow this adaptation process. Of course, the translators were used to machine translation before, but neural machine translation was new. Everybody was wondering, what can it do? Some people were quite skeptical. Some people were a bit more enthusiastic. And I would say I was really surprised by the intellectual curiosity people had about this topic. They wanted to test it. They wanted to laugh at it. They wanted to be amused by it. And then they wanted to try it out. So I would say there was no collision with innovation and public and administration in this respect. I was amazed by the curiosity people approach this topic with, and still do. So I think that's a very positive example of innovation landing to a public administration.
Thank you, Marja. Maybe Beate, do you have a story from your organization?
Yes. So I don't think we are a leader, but we are not only a follower. So we are using new technologies for more than 25 years. So we are using CAD tools, for example, since 2000, I think. And we are still using new things. And one successful example is multi-term online. We are working in a working group together with the German language services of the German ministries. And there we needed a terminology platform to share our terminology. And therefore, multi-term online was developed due to our needs. And now everybody is using it, but we were the first, I think. So that's a good example, because we often have special needs due to our infrastructure and our security needs, so that we have to find solutions and sometimes to invent solutions that others can use too later on.
Thank you, Beate. Josep, would you like to come in?
Oh, yes, I come in. I must say that, we are probably not the most in general. I mean, I'm not talking about DGT because DGT is because of the size and all that. There are many more possibilities to be innovative and to play around with things. In middle-sized organizations like mine, it's more difficult to become innovative because at the end of the day, you must guarantee the daily production of things, and being innovative is quite an investment, and you go into things that you don't know what you are embarking into, and people are afraid many times that this would be a loss of time and not a real win. But individually, you see things that happen, and the important thing is to let people follow their impulses in this case, and go for what they are really interested in, and then you see islands of innovation. I cannot say that I have a very good story about innovation, but I can tell you that while, for example, introduction of certain kind of technology was taking time because people were reluctant, and it's a change of paradigm and blah blah blah, you discover that a certain community which is deemed less technological than the others, they want to do machine translation all the time, and they say, can we have machine translation? Can we have machine translation? And this, in a way, it's a kind of frustration for me, because I should have been pushing them to do machine translation, but they were pushing me to do machine translation. So I think that, as Beate was saying, we are not pure followers. We also embark into things. And for example, we've been working lately quite intensely in speech to text, in speech recognition, which is something that I think will have some future, at least in my organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Josep. Maja, how are you doing at the World Meteorological Organization?
Well, right now, as you can imagine, we are rather busy with the COP26 meeting taking place in Glasgow, but I am in Geneva, like all of translators. So that is, I think, one of the major shifts that happened in the last decade, that we don't have anymore the suite of translators going to any conference venue. Being a small specialized agency of the United Nations, of course, we cannot be leaders. We follow certain trends, but I would say where we can innovate, it is in the direct contact, human contact with the experts. Our experts are scientists from the field of meteorology, hydrology, and other areas of work of WMO. And at the beginning, someone mentioned the communication, how you Dieter said, how do we sell ourselves? In general, poorly. But we found this path with scientists because they went through the same process when, for instance, meteorological observations, at the time they were done by hand, by people who would have to go 5-6 times a day to the same meteorological stations, when they moved to automatic observations. So they were very open to hearing our ideas about machine translation, and they were also very they understood what were the limitations that are now, of course, being moved. So I would say it is always interesting to draw parallels with the work of or the area of specialization of your clients. We involve them in our most difficult projects, like the World on the International Cloud Atlas, or discussions on some difficult terms that may at first sight seem obvious, like why would you want to gather 10 experts to discuss how to translate space meteorology in various languages, but it turned out that there was every reason to do so. So that would be from me for the time being.
Good, thank you, Maja. So a mixed bag, can we say that? Because it depends, of course, a bit on the size of the organization, of what you can do. Maybe I like Josep's comment that there's these little groups of people who push more, who are sitting in the offices doing their work and pushing upwards and sideways for things to happen. If we look at the discussions outside of the public sphere, what's happening in the industry at the moment, there's obviously the huge advance of neural machine translation has brought in the last couple of years, which is fascinating. It's surprising sometimes, but it has triggered a lot of very radical discussions sometimes in the translation industry of where this journey is going. I've not been able to follow TEF, but seeing the names of some of the speakers, maybe some of these ideas were shared already in the last day, because there are people who say, well, machine translation is so good that basically, in order to do post-editing, you don't need a translator anymore. You need a domain expert and maybe a few technical improvements here and there, but it's a translator is almost wasted on this type of work. And then there were some articles in the specialized press who said, translation as the classic business is where you sell your time to produce translations is dead. You should sell your time to curate data. Data curation is the future, not translation. Translation will be done by machines. Sometimes the discussions, I think it's a situation where nobody quite knows where the journey is going, so discussions go all over the place. A question to the panelists: how do these discussions resonate in your organizations? Are you kind of safely tucked away in your institutional environment and you don't have to bother with it, or are these discussions something that you share internally? Do you participate in them in fora like TEF? Is it something you discuss over a glass of wine with colleagues? How do we in public administrations deal with sort of the push for more radical change in the industry? Just because I see Pep smiling, I would like to give you the floor first.
Next time I will not smile. Be reassured. No, I think that these kind of discussions they happen in our domain. They happen when we meet. For example, in Geneva, we meet several chiefs of service and to liaise regularly. But it also happens inside the organization. But it takes, in my case, it takes a certain bias, in the sense that you cannot put it radically like translators will disappear and you will always have some translators, some revisors, because we need to curate data and so on, because they will say, what happens with my position? Am I going to disappear? Or even more than that, because even though they know that they are not going to disappear, they think, what happens to my friends, my colleagues, my partners, people who go to university now, which is the future for all of them. So you cannot put it in this way. But there's something that happens. We know that ISO standard for translation processes establishes that a translation is only a translation if two different people have seen it. And guess what? It never happens in international organizations, including DGT. I've been there. I know that it happens in some cases, but in other cases it doesn't happen. In the UN system, you call it self-revision. Come on, self-revision is no revision. So it's a fallacy. So what I think the first impact that I discuss with my people, and they agree on that, is that with machine translation, the number of self-revisions or self-revision processes will increase enormously, especially for the lower value kind of work. So that's how the discussion is introduced. Now it has to be extended, but I'd like to see how my colleagues lead these discussions in their organizations.
Yes, can I ask Beate to share if this is being discussed and how in your ministry?
Yes, of course. We get pressure from the ministry, we get pressure from our clients to use machine translation. And of course, my colleagues are worried about their jobs, about the work, and if they will like their work in the future. But I think we will always need human translators. We have a lot of texts that are culturally sensitive, literal texts, secret texts who cannot be translated by a machine. So I don't think that we all will lose our jobs. The work will change. We will have to post-edit a lot more than now, but translation will not disappear. So maybe we have to be a bit louder what we do and what we can, what skills we have. So I think most people don't even know how translation works. So maybe we have to show what we do and how we do it.
Thank you, Beate. Maja?
Beate just said maybe we have to show how we do it. You would think it would exist, but apparently we don't always speak with the same tone and use the same language. Otherwise, everyone would understand what translation is all about. So that's something that we from the panel have to take later on. What I wanted to say is that we have finished 2-3 weeks ago the session of our main governing body, and I had a question that was in fact served to me by one of the delegates who complained that one particular set of documents was not available in all the languages because traditionally they were always left in one language, which I was always against, but there were never resources to do it. So I was glad that I could say that in the future we will be using, in fact, we were in the middle of this pilot project to translate using machine translation, those particular documents, which are sort of background documents. And for the first time, there was a whole paragraph, in fact, quite big, about my statement. I mean, I was not quoted, but it was inserted and all the delegates were very happy. They were also happy to see that the assessment groups did not consist only of translators, but also of experts. So I think this is also a future. We really have to engage with our audience, raise the awareness about the quality of the work that we can provide, and what is being missed if we simply have to press the button and, you know, it's done next without any human intervention.
Thank you, Maja. Marja?
Thank you, Dieter and colleagues. Indeed, Dieter mentioned the public administrations just safely tucked away somewhere in the corner, ignoring the storm outside. I wouldn't think so, and I don't think any organization these days can be tucked away from the discussion on automation and how to be more efficient. Show me an organization which isn't trying to be more efficient these days. I don't think you will find it. Of course, in DGT, we are also discussing very much all these issues. What will be the human input when we are using so many technological tools, and we have now neural machine translation, which has admittedly improved in terms of quality in the past few years. So what will be left for the human translators to do? And of course, in DGT, one speciality in our case is that most of our work is of legal nature. We are responsible for translating European law into 24 official languages, and we must ensure that all these versions are equally accurate and authentic. So this is a very special task that doesn't exist in many other organizations. So I would say there you certainly see human input staying and being strong in the coming years as well. And I think it was Beate who mentioned confidentiality. We also deal with a lot of confidential documents which cannot be put into cloud, and they cannot be translated by machine translation. I very much agree with what Beate and Maja were saying, both of them, that we need to also raise awareness with our customers about translation and what we do. Of course, in DGT, we also get questions from the customers. Why can't I just do this with machine translation? Or why can't you just improve a little bit the machine translation output? And that would be good enough for my purposes, wouldn't it? So we need to enter into dialogue about these things. And before we can do that, of course, we need to understand ourselves what we are talking about, where we come then back to the ISO standards and post-editing and all this discussion. And yeah, I'd say that increased dialogue with our customers and also increasing their understanding of how translation technology works and doesn't work is very crucial for the future. And we can't just hide away and say, okay, we don't want to talk about it. I think it's a very useful dialogue because it helps also us to understand better what we are talking about.
Good, thank you for this, colleagues. We have a couple of Slido questions that we could look at. Maybe let's pick the first one. Translators will not disappear, but many in public translation services fear that their job will get boring. They feel underappreciated. What would you tell them? Who would like to take this question? Who has experienced with colleagues who are not happy with the way things are going?
I don't have experience, but I have no problem in taking the question. I mean, I think that the problem about getting bored or not getting bored is the problem about changing mindset. Let's go back to the time when translation memories were introduced. When translation memory were introduced, the long-standing translators, they were strongly against it. Why? Because it was no more creative. You were no more creating sentences. You were reusing and hammering to correct things into a translation memories. And these comments I've heard for a number of years since the mid-90s. Now it's not the problem anymore because many translators come from school and from translation schools and they learn how to use translation memory. So translation memory is the standard way of translating. Now, the assumption that they will get bored if they diverge a bit from this this work of using translation memories to create final sentences and go more into, I don't know, curation, annotation, all the kind of things that must be done, or revision, because at the end of the day, one of the things that we should not forget is that all these techniques, translation memories and machine translation, are based on good, high quality documents. And these high quality documents can only be vetted by translators. So it's translator work. It's simply a bit different. So you get bored if you are not committed to, if you are not excited by change. But this happened in the past. Just for those who forgot it, in the 40s in Nuremberg, the interpreters started simultaneous interpretation, and interpreters at the time said, this is impossible, we cannot do like this is not interpretation. Now you tell an interpreter that simultaneous interpretation is not interpretation, and they will laugh at you. So I think that it's very relative. Thank you.
Thank you, Josep. Marja?
Thank you, Dieter. I really liked Josep's example of interpretation. I would say that many other professions are also changing their nature, and people are more becoming part of ecosystems with, if I can use this term, part of ecosystem with technology. So it requires, as Josep was saying, a different mindset. And I would also very much emphasize the idea that without good quality data, there is nothing in the translation. So it's really crucial for human beings to be in the loop and contribute to this. But I would say boring, yeah, it depends on what you mean by boring. I think this is an exciting time to be in any profession. Thank you.
Okay, I said in the beginning, we try to start positive, but then we somehow go a bit downhill. And you've been so positive now that I'm almost disappointed. Let's talk about things that don't work, because that's more interesting for the audience. Because, you know, we had you need to have right mindset, and change is not boring. And I agree, obviously, wholeheartedly with that. But still, what in your organization, when you look outside, things are moving fast, people use all kinds of new tools. What stands in the way of innovation in your organization, if anything, apart from the obvious, like money, because we don't talk about money, but what is there anything when you look at your organization today and said, so is that a translation service, a public administration, 21st century? What should it be? What is your vision? And what, if it's different from what it is now, what keeps us from moving and embracing technology even more? Not, maybe it's not just a question of technology, there are many other aspects, obviously, working methods, processes. Who would like to take this? Nobody is not an option. Maja, please save me.
Okay, I wanted to say that the questions that we exchanged as the topics for our discussion, I shared them with our teams of translators, including those who work for us as freelancers, with our interns, younger generation, and with young translators who work for us now as freelancers. And the questions, at times the replies were surprising. Those whom I expected to be against the change, innovation, and whom I expected to say, no, this is a special type of work, we cannot use machine translation, were in fact all for it, because it took some time to convince them, to show them the benefits, and now they are embracing it. And I think they understand that is the future, whether we call it post-editing or whatever, self-revision, as Josep referred to it. That's an outdated UN term for it. What stands now in the way of saying, oh, it works perfectly is, for example, one question that was, I think, also among the sliders, and it is integration of terminology and machine translation. Of course, it is possible, and it will be possible to have it very well integrated, but it is not the case currently. And it is maybe something that is preventing us to taking on some solutions of the shelf solutions that seem to be good. That will take some time to develop. Now I will leave the floor to my colleagues who maybe thought of something else in the meantime.
I think Marja has something else.
Thank you. Okay, coming to the question, what could stand in the way of innovation? In the European Commission, I would say we live in very busy times. We have a huge workload. The Commission's ambitious political agenda requires our constant input, and that's of course very inspiring, at least in my opinion. But at the same time, we would have to think about the future. How do we innovate our working methods? What will be our service look like in five years or in 10 years? And the lack of time is sometimes kind of daunting, and it can be an obstacle for innovation. And I would propose that innovation can start small. A good example was some time ago when DGT's Innovation Lab was presenting a series of small machine learning applications which could be used in the future to improve our working methods. I think that was a very inspiring example of innovation starting small. We often think about innovation as a big bang. It's something groundbreaking, but the innovation, everyday innovation, could be a way forward for public administrations which are increasingly under a huge workload and not getting more resources, human resources, let's put it this way. And as far as my vision for future would be a more and more integrated service with customers, our contractors, and sort of service on demand approach, because this is what our organization needs. We need to be responsive, we need to be more agile, and we need to be constantly improving ourselves. Thank you.
Good. I don't know if one of the other panelists would like to come in on this question.
I can come in because I like it. Just several months before the pandemic started, I made a whole presentation, half an hour on this subject. So it's a subject that I like. Why innovation is difficult in public administrations. And I spotted a number of reasons, but the main reason is wealth. Wealth is bad and poverty is good. Necessity is the mother of invention. And I'm very honest there. I think that if you don't have a reason to innovate, you don't innovate. Unless you, when I hear that we are under a lot of work and workload and blah, 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 then I think that's a good reason to innovate. Because that's where innovation will bring real benefits. If you have enormous amounts of money, enormous amount of time, then why innovate? So I'm not proposing that we cut down the budgets of our different of our services, because that's not the purpose. But the lack of pressure from the budgetary from the budgetary authorities in some cases. I know places where nobody cares about translation, provided that you don't create a problem. That's okay. If you don't hear from you, that's good. With this, you're not going to innovate, and then it becomes difficult if you really cannot justify when you discuss with people, and then we should introduce this and that. So why? We are doing well. And one thing very important that Marja was mentioning, and I think that's extremely important, is this collaboration with the customer and identifying which are the real needs of the customer, because I have the belief that we have not yet identified in all places, maybe in your place you have, but not in all places we have identified which is the quality levels which are really requested by our clients, because we don't have the right conversation. Because if the conversation is, which is the quality level that you want, they say top quality. But then if you say, okay, then it will cost you 20 days for 10 pages, they say, oh, can you do it shorter? And I say, yeah, but quality will be a bit less. And then eventually you discover that maybe for this specific document, what they need is something very, very basic. And this also is part of the innovation. Innovation for me is also adapting what you do to the real needs and not producing a one size fits all that you are very proud of, but it doesn't serve the community. Because many times we tend to be autistic if we don't talk to the real consumer of our products.
Thank you, Josep. Very well said. Beate, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, so I can fully agree with what Josep said. The most sentence I hear when we are introducing something new is, but we have always done it this way. Why should we change it? Because new things, new technologies are always disturbing the daily routine, and we have to do our daily work, and we do not always have time to learn new things. So that's because we have to prepare the introduction of new things very well, so that people can see why it can help them and what is the advantage for them and for their work. So we have to show them how to use it and how to use it for their advantage, not just for the fact that it is something new and, oh, we are so modern and innovative. So we have to show them and to teach them to use it swiftly and correctly. Otherwise, they will get frustrated and try to bypass the new technologies and new working rules and workflows. I think that's essential.
Good. Thank you, Beate. Maybe we should have I see Maja's hand up, I think, because I wanted to go to the Slido, but if your hand's up, you have priority.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say, Joseph put it very nicely. The necessity is the mother of innovation. or invention, and that is what one of my colleagues keeps saying. We've undergone a major restructuring in WMO, and this is exactly what happens. If any translator must nowadays, I would say, feel outside of his or her comfort zone because of all the changes, etc. So if you are in an organization that just simply gives you as much money as you want, then maybe you will have less innovation. We are not in such a situation. And I see it also in other areas of work. It has sparked many small inventions. As I think Marja said previously, it doesn't have to be a big bang, but many small changes can lead to something that everyone will appreciate at the end. Thank you, and sorry for
Thank you, Maja. Yeah, can we have the Slido? Thank you. And the top question I think is very interesting. Anonymous, how do you think the cooperation between translators, language technologists, and IT should be designed in the future with regards to machine translation? Should it be designed differently than it is today? I don't know who wants it. Beate? Oh, okay.
I think we have to learn to talk in the same language. So my experience is that the IT isn't understood by the translators. They don't speak the same language, and we have to learn what the others want to say, what the others know. So I think translators, language technologists, and IT people have to know a bit of the others' jobs. So that's important. Otherwise, we can't understand what the others want from us.
Now the question is, how do we do that? How do we make these people understand each other?
That's a problem. I'm trying. I'm some kind of translator between translators and IT people, and I try to moderate and to mediate between those two subjects.
Good, thank you, Beate. Let's take another question. How to reconcile a case for quality as something provided by humans with the reality that clients want reduced budgets and only need good enough quality? Josep, you kind of already mentioned to the dilemma of the fit for purpose, or what quality do you need? And if you ask the question in the wrong way, it is always the highest possible quality. Do you want to react to that question, or?
Yeah, I would like to react to this question because I don't know who Anonymous is, but I guess it's a translator, because somebody from another walk of life would not have asked the question in this way. Because I am a translator. Well, I translated very little and too bad, and that's why I was promoted to manager. But I think that a translator looks at the product and takes pride in providing the highest quality possible. But that's not the reality of a production, of an industrial production as the one we see. In an industrial production, we must produce things. We have a minimum quality, but which serves the purpose for which they are destined. I mean, if I want to buy a car, to go to, as somebody was telling me this morning, I want a car just to go to the next village to buy the bread in the morning and come back, then I don't need many features that a high top quality car will produce. So I just need a minimum set of things. And at the end of the day, the person producing the car should think, am I serving the purpose? Am I helping this person do what this person wants to do? Or am I producing a high quality product that will not be appreciated and is not needed, but I get an enormous amount of satisfaction?
It had to happen at some point. Okay, let's spend some time on existential dread. You kind of, in the discussion, several of you already said that when we discuss innovation, new technologies, neural MT, when you talk with colleagues, then there are two ways of thinking they're the ones who embrace it and who think this is great stuff and interesting. And then there's also those who say, oh, translation is dead. I have to find myself another job. Now, TEF has, I think we have about 500, 600, 700 people watching, and a lot of the people participating in TEF are students of translation or people who think about making this their profession for the next 30, 40 years. How do you, first of all, work with your staff and prepare them for this potential paradigm shift that might come when suddenly machine translation is the thing that everybody does, and it's only post-editing, and the boredom is looming ahead of us? And what do you tell a young person who is watching your discussions that was very positive, far more positive than I expected, admittedly, what they should, how they should tackle the career that they have planned? Should they? Who wants to answer this and dispel the possible existential dread that some colleagues might feel? Marja, I think you're trying to find the unmute.
Yes, thank you. I managed to unmute myself. I'll tell you an anecdote. My neighbor here in Tervuren, where I'm sitting at the moment, it's a small Flemish city outside Brussels, and her original profession was long time ago. She's retired now, but she used to be an international telephonist. So international telephonist was someone who was connecting international telephone calls in the telephone exchanges before the era of digital telephone exchanges. So obviously this kind of profession has now disappeared. It doesn't exist anymore. My original profession is a librarian, and it has also changed quite a bit, although paper format books still exist. But I think change is something that will happen to most professions. And there's an excellent book I read recently by an Oxford economist, Mr. Frey, called Technology Trap, which is a history of automation. I heartily recommend this to everybody who is feeling existential dread about automation. I would say to anyone who believes wants to have a career in translation is that, yes, go for it. If that's something that motivates you, makes your heart sing, makes you enthusiastic. But it might come to career change one day, as it happens to many of us. It's not a big problem. I would say that automation is penetrating almost all walks of life these days. And little did I know when I was a literature student at the university that I would be going into computer programming and work with telecommunications engineers. It can happen to you, and it's a great experience. So I would say, go for something that motivates you. And I believe there is also a great future in linguistic services, as we have heard already today and probably hear more tomorrow.
Good. Thank you, Marja. Any other words for the younger generation, Josep?
Well, I can take the challenge. You asked also for our own people. For our own people, I must say, well, we also do a lot of legal. We also do a lot of very delicate and sensitive things. There you need humans, and you need a lot of humans. Fewer humans for the same results, but we know that we are drowning under workload. So I don't see an existential threat there. The youngest generation, that's the problem. I'm 18. I want to follow a career. Is there a career? Well, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I look at what's happening in the industry. The industry is blooming. I've never seen so much translation in the world as now. And because we started with automation, the possibilities of translation have gone incrementally, and we still don't cover all the needs. Obviously, we see this part of the needs that I covered by machine translation. We see Netflix series that are subtitled in English, and it's a disaster. But that's just examples. When machine translation started, we had all these funnies, all these bad translations and we were laughing at, ha, 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 ha. But the truth is that the translation is a blooming industry. If you look at the amounts that are paid in mergers these days, companies swallow companies at millions of dollars, and not millions, billions of dollars. So we are there. So this means something. When people invest so much money, there's something behind. So probably it will not be translation as I knew when I started in '88, but it will still be language-related activity very close to translation.
Thank you, Josep. Maja, you wanted to come in?
Yes, I wanted to say basically the same thing for younger linguists or those who would like to take this path. Stay open, stay tuned, do what you like, but don't expect that you will stay in the same world or profession all your life. Marja is a very good example, and we've all had very different paths. It will change definitely very fast, and just be ready to change in the same way. I must say, Marja, I didn't hear you well when you recommended the book. So I was like, did you say that you hardly recommend the book, Technology Trap, or you heartily recommend? Then I understood it was the second one. So I will definitely read it, and I recommend it to all of us. There is work, as Josep said, but it will probably be changing.
Good. Beate, I don't know if you wanted to also react.
Yes, so from my own career, I can say if something is stopped, or if something is no longer needed, there will be something else what you may like. So there are a lot of interesting jobs apart from translation where the skills are needed, where language and communication skills are needed. So I don't think that will be a boring future if you study translation. So learn your basics and look what is happening around you.
Okay, so I have one more final question for the panelists with a request for a quick answer, because we're almost at the end of this session. The endlessly quotable Peter Drucker, the management guru, said, if you want something new, you have to stop something old. You have to stop doing something old. Please, for your organization, what is the new thing that you want to see happen in the next 5 years? And what is the one old thing that you should stop doing? Josep, it's that smile that always drags me into you. Sorry.
I always tell me, don't smile in public. Don't smile in public. No, but I get cut. Well, I can tell you what I would like to stop. And I would like to stop the overdependency on citations. I mean, it's getting on my nerves. And I mean, I know that we work in legal and all that, and when we cite, and we should cite precisely. But I see such an obsession about citation that even when there's a hidden reference to something, it should be exactly as. And if it's hidden, it's hidden. I mean, even if the original is not citing exactly, we should not cite in translation. I know that that's very small, has nothing to do with technology, but that's one of the things, one of the obstacles to full adoption of translation memories and machine translation, because we need to be precise every time with every single sentence. And sometimes I've seen documents with 1 page and 1,000 references that you have checked just to translate 1 page. Humanly impossible to do. So I would like to stop this.
Okay, anything new that you would like to do instead?
Oh yes. It's not that new. What I would like to see is really that the machine gives me a text which is so good that the linguist on the wheel will just have to check that everything is okay, then bring it to the requested level of quality and so on. But I think that's what we are talking about these days. So that's why I didn't mention, because for me it's not that new.
No, it's not that new, but we can wish for it. Who else wants to comment on the question? Maybe Maja.
I can comment.
Yeah, Marja, please.
Yeah, thank you. What I would like to stop is being overly stressed about the future. I would say beyond all the hype, there is hope. So the existential dread should not be the prevailing feeling all the time. And start to do more is to talk to customers, understand their needs, and integrate your services to the customer's needs. Because at the end of the day, even DGT is a service organization, and we are there to put our efforts into making EU's policies come true. So I think I would like to see internal translation services become more customer oriented. Thank you.
Thank you, Maja. Yeah, Maja, please.
Thank you. I would like to see that we, in those organizations where English is first language, which is the case in WMO and in many, I would say, scientific agencies, I would like us to see. I would like us to stop moaning about the poor quality of the original texts. That is something that you can hear at every meeting. It is a fact. And instead of that, let's try to provide training that is an additional thing that normally linguists don't do, but when you invite them to do so, they are in fact delighted to be able to educate somehow our users, to show them the examples that Josep referred earlier at the beginning. Google Translate made us laugh, now not anymore, or not anymore so, but definitely Poor Original can serve as a good example that you nicely teach the authors how they should write. But we as linguists should really stop putting that as one of the main obstacles to do the work using the right deadline or the right tools. Thank you.
Thank you. Beate?
So what I want to see happen is a stronger focus on information management and knowledge exchange so that we can profit from each other. That's what I would like to see more. And what I want to stop is to hype or demonize new things. I think it's better to stick to the facts and try things and discuss things, and then decide if we can use it or not. But these hypes are horrible.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, colleagues. So I leave reassured. Things are going well at a reasonable pace, hopefully. We have still a lot of questions on the Slido that we didn't get to, and we won't get to because the session is coming to an end. If you want to know more about public service, translation, language services, tune in at 5:30 where Marja Hennessy will moderate a session on this topic. And with that, thank you all, the panelists, for your participation and the interesting discussion. And I would like to hand the floor back to Aminda.
Thank you, Dieter. And moving on from your existential dread, we're going to be looking towards the mountains of hope in front of us in the next session. But before then, we're going to have a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back to hear about how translators can remain successful in an MT-driven world. And we'll be hearing from an award-winning translator trainer. So we'll see you then, and that brings this session to a close.